So, good morning, Professor. Professor, before you even say a word, the shortest we've ever done a show, I think, is an hour. And it usually goes an hour, 10 minutes, hour, 15 minutes. Last week was an hour and 35 minutes. Can we do a show in 25 minutes?
We're gonna try. We're gonna try and do it. I'll say we can do it in 35 or 40.
All right,
Yeah.
you've got a really important meeting. And I'm not saying it's with the president or the governor or somebody, but it's with somebody important, and you have to leave in 25 minutes. So,
All right.
Professor, just humor me and try to get through this show in 25 minutes. Okay, it's an
Okay.
important meeting. We want to honor your time.
Keep my answer short.
Okay, good. Tell me about selfie museums. You're the historian.
A what?
Selfie museum.
I have no idea what you're talking
I
about.
thought you're a historian. Why would you not know about selfie museums?
I don't know. I don't because I'm not the keeper of all knowledge, I guess.
Okay, fine. Let me just say that it's the trend in Europe about 5 years ago. It's finally come to America. We've got two on the 16th Street Mall in Denver. You go in there and you take a selfie in front of some weird background, and it's called a selfie museum. It has nothing to do with museums. Now, you want to call it entertainment? Fine. But calling them selfie museums, I protest, Professor. Agree or disagree?
Well, just based on that description, I don't. It sounds. I mean, are they archiving this stuff
No.
for
Well,
display
no, you gotta
value?
take a picture and share it on social Instagram or something. It's no, it's just a
I,
entertainment.
I have no idea what. I don't know. I
The
don't
reason
know.
I bring this up, Professor, is words have no meaning anymore. They just really don't.
Well, it certainly seems like that. That's for
Okay,
sure.
thank you. Tell us about Syria. All of a sudden now there's going to be peace in the Middle East.
No, there. But I I sometimes lean on the one of our wisest uh, statesmen, great president, very underrated president, and hopefully highly rated Secretary of State John Quincy Adams. You
Okay.
know, we
Hey,
wish
Professor, would you believe that I couldn't tell you one single fact, not one single fact about John Quincy Adams, except that he's president? I guess one fact.
Well, there's a great new book on John Quincy Adams by Randall Woods, and whose son went to grad school with me and was is a great guy.
Can we have
Uh,
him in our on our show?
we could probably get both of them. They're both just super nice, down to earth, cool historians. But Randall Woods has a new biography of John Quincy Adams that's fantastic and
Well,
highly recommended.
give two lines or
Oh,
1 minute max.
well, I just want to say what his advice was that what do we
On
do
the Middle East, right?
yeah, but just in terms of general advice,
Okay.
how should the United States approach some country that is emerging, right? And then in his case, he was talking about Latin America, but this
Okay.
general principle applies, which is that we wish them well, but we
Love that.
also know that habits of hierarchy, military and ecclesiastical, has been stamped upon their characters. So
What
the
a great quote. I've never heard that quote.
yeah,
Wow.
that so what that means is that for most people around the world, they don't have a tradition of self-government. They have a tradition of hierarchy that comes either from a military or security relationship or from some religious institution. But what what needs to exist in order for a society to function and be peaceful is you also have to have the underlying culture. The laws themselves are
One thing.
just
Yeah.
laws, right? It's the people who have to follow them. We talk about rule of law a lot on this podcast, but you know,
Clearly ineffectively, because I don't think anyone believes in it. Anyone. I maybe
yeah,
Karen signed on. She's a lawyer and a thoughtful person, and maybe you and Bard and I do. I think there's
yeah,
five of us in America that currently
but you
care.
but you actually have to believe in the process of following laws because you understand that that's what will be best for society, not taking the shortcut you want to take.
And
And
remember, we only have 22 minutes left.
right,
So the
so
hit
so
Syria.
what this means for Syria is that we wish them well, and we
Love
should
it.
stand prepared to help in or as Lincoln said, I'll help when help seems to be, I'll do less when less seems to be helping. But we should expect that it's going to be a very difficult, long, bumpy road, and that until you have a culture of self-government, that it's going to be a long and painful road.
And the current leader, or at least temporary warlord leader, is a former member of Al Qaeda. I mean, these are pretty harsh characters, right? So we wish them well, but there's not going to be immediate peace in the Middle East. Come on,
No,
Professor, give us some hope.
yeah, no, we're not going to. But who knows? Sometimes he sounds reasonable.
He's nice, yeah.
And there's a part of statesmanship that is like, let's build on whatever is good, but knowing that that is not always going to lead to success.
So believe it or not, there's actually a trend to this conversation so far, which I really like. I didn't anticipate that. We talked about selfie museums. Words don't have meaning. We've talked a little bit about peace in the Middle East, right? Um, talk to us about, and I hope that you haven't seen this like I have. My guess is you've seen reports on it now because the Washington Post and New York Times and a bunch of other folks have editorialized against it. But there is not a small contingent. I mean, it's a healthy minority of America that seems to be celebrating the murder of the healthcare CEO. I mean, it's not one weirdo down the block in a basement.
Right.
It's a cross section of mostly liberal, by the way, and I'm using I should say left, not liberal. The left is seeming to celebrate murder. Have you seen observed this, or is it just some
Yes.
of my
No,
friends?
I've seen it. I've seen both the celebration and the joking and all adjacent. Yeah.
Tacit support and
Right.
about time and boy, this is a warning and it's going to keep it and it needs to happen and thank
Yep.
God this is the tipping point and right, you've seen
Yep.
all that.
I've overheard it in the hallways. Yeah.
Professor, we're going mad. It is really dangerous. I truly, and I don't mean, you know me, I don't try to be melodramatic for points or to even get views. I do the opposite usually. I truly, in the last week, and I'll share some screenshots I've taken of friends, real friends, and their friends who have basically threatened my life because I said we shouldn't celebrate murder. Well, then I'm part of the deal. And then they go into my profile and they say I have an American flag and I'm part of the Trumpy whatever. And then they say, and you're a white male and they're looking in my background and they go, you're a CEO. You better watch your back. A CEO of a nonprofit a decade ago.
Yeah.
Seriously, I think this is a really dangerous time. Talk to me historically. No, John, you're wrong. It's always a dangerous time. Or
Well, it, it's always a dangerous time, but also it doesn't take that many violent people to engage in terrorism. That's the main advantage that terrorism has. Is It's no different than lynching to have voter suppression in the South or anybody anywhere really. You know, when you murder someone publicly, you are doing it in order to scare everybody. And
the definition of terrorism is that.
yeah, and in this particular case, it's not exactly a lynching because he didn't stand up and reveal his face on purpose, and it wasn't.
Right.
But I just mean that in terms of the effect that it has, you don't have to kill everybody in order to scare everybody. So that's why terrorism is such an effective tactic for altering people, and violence in general is an effective tactic for getting people to alter their behavior.
So,
It's-
Professor, let me
yeah,
interrupt you and then take either your own thought or this thought. What I'm really worried about is not the left. Yes, I'm worried about them. I'm worried about the left and the right combating each other. I didn't foresee, we've talked about this in previous episodes over the last few years about a civil war in America. But for 9 years now, I've been warning about President Trump's or candidate, then president, then non, then candidate, then President Trump's disregard of the Constitution. We can talk about that in a different show, but that's been my concern. There are clearly elements. I think it's a significant minority of President Trump's supporters who are willing to use violence for political means. We saw some of them on January 6th. But that wasn't mainstream Republicans. That wasn't mainstream Trumpians. It was an element of people that were willing to use violence to achieve their political means. So I've been concerned about that since January 6, 2021. I am more concerned now about violence on the left and then the reaction of some people on the right. And then a teeter tottering that America isn't actually what we thought it was. Am I just completely paranoid now?
Well, let me throw out the subject that I think we need to talk about more in the coming years, is because I'm starting to think that it's not the left or the right, even in a way that I'm not scared, because I'm not scared of liberals and I'm not scared of conservatives, and I'm
Agreed.
and I'm not really scared of the right in terms of, like, when I think of people who are legitimately on the right, would be somebody who wants to, like some of our NatCon friends who
Right.
would like to have a, theocracy more in line with religious law. I'm not scared about them. I mean, I'm a little bit scared, but I'm not scared
Right.
of
Right.
them
And there are some of those people that really want that. Yeah.
right, but I'm not scared about them murdering people right now, right?
Agreed.
And I'm not
Professor,
really,
I'm trying to use left and right in the way you describe it, that
I
they
know,
are
but
antithetical to the Constitution.
yeah, yeah, but so I'm worried about the left and the right in the long term, right? But and I'm, the socialist who wants to so I'm worried about the right who wants to destroy the Constitution. I'm worried about the left who would like to destroy the Constitution, but I'm worried about those things over the long term. I think what I'm scared of is this sort of the ignorant hatred that really doesn't even deserve to be called left or right.
That's a good nuance.
It's actually some sort of a new stew that doesn't have a name yet. That because all of the previous labels for it uh, refer to it. It's like on the right, it has a name when you're describing the left. You hear people describe wokeism and stuff like that.
Right.
And then when you hear leftists, they talk about it as being Trumpy or whatever. But but really, what I'm scared of is this thing that's both, that is
Yeah.
actually neither. It's the same sort of stew of rejection of law, embrace of power, embrace of violence, and it gives it too much credit to call it an ideology. you
Well,
know,
so Professor, how about this? And you won't like this, but there's some truth to this. How about I think Freud had it right. It's this unbridled id. It's immaturity, just testosterone prone to reaction. And maybe it's not Freud's id, but it's immaturity. It's willing to.
yeah. I don't know if I'd call it testosterone because frankly, I don't think there's any gender distinction I've seen
I've
in
seen
it.
just as many from women as I have men. So I agree
Yeah.
on the testosterone, but I'm trying to get that
Yeah.
feeling of just
But we
violence.
need to stumble towards giving this thing a name, because
Interesting.
I don't I see it being called many things, but it's always by an opponent on the other side. When I think what's actually happening is the same. I don't and it's just that the two sides don't see it because they're only looking at one side or the other. This
Okay.
guy, yeah. Anyway, we
Okay.
need to
So,
discuss this
Professor, we've
more.
done at least one show completely dedicated to the history of violence, and we brought it up in at least a half a dozen other shows. And so, but maybe we do need to revisit it again to kind of think through it together. So, we've got another show topic to think about. Let's go to the next topic, though, because we still haven't even gotten to the main topic.
Oh
Um,
wow.
we've, talked, we've talked about murder, and I'm telling you, it is. We got to do something. Everybody's got to do something. It's a little scary. Okay, presidential appointments. Now let's go. Let's say something on the pardon first. Historically, Joe Biden was wrong to pardon his son, was he not? What was
Yes.
the pardon designed for? What's the purpose? He can do
Well,
it legally. He can do it, but really, come
yeah.
on, Joe.
So it's an unlimited power that it came from kings, but it was also granted at a time when there were almost no federal laws. And the idea was that there has to be some sort of backstop, uh,
Pressure relief valve.
yeah,
If
to correct some grievous
yeah,
national wrong, to handle a situation of, like, what do you do with someone who engaged in rebellion and now they're super old, or the pardon of Richard Nixon was probably the best use of presidential pardon, like it was sinking the federal government to keep addressing these things. But nobody has ever used, and maybe the most distasteful pardons or were probably took place at the end of the Clinton administration. That was pretty
I
incredible.
remember some of those. Yeah.
Oh, go back and look because just as he was leaving office, he pardoned friends and political supporters and donors and just it was
We got to
crazy.
keep moving. You're
Yeah,
leaving
sorry.
in 10
Anyway,
minutes.
but yeah, what Biden did is completely unprecedented. Nobody's ever um
Pardon their own
even
family member.
right. And I think I need to go back and study it more carefully, but I've seen two things that seem like reasonable suggestions. One is maybe it's time to get rid of this,
No,
uh,
I disagree. We need to keep it, Professor. But what's your
or
second?
grant it to the Senate
No,
with a
I disagree with that too. So
two-thirds
let's talk
vote,
about that in another show.
or maybe impeach Joe Biden over this.
There we go. I actually like that one.
So
I think
I
this is an
I
impeachable
just said
offense.
there are some ideas. I'm like I don't know. I'm open to. I want to hear more about. I want to hear more discussion about these ideas.
Yeah,
So I'm just
society
not
needs to
saying no.
push back on this. So thanks for that. I agree with you on the third. How about when Trump pardons 1,500 January 6th, right? And he won't do them all, by the way, but he pardoned a ton of them within the first 9 minutes. We really don't want to support that either, do we?
No,
Okay, thank you.
you know,
Enough on that.
but
The answer that's correct.
yeah, yeah.
And I know I'm sorry, I'm just doing this to be I know you're the
Uh,
professor with lots of history and authority. I shouldn't just say you're right. Um, who was that guy on Crossfire that you're wrong? Yeah.
or
So
the McLaughlin group.
McLaughlin group, that's right. Yeah. But we need to move to the topic, and then we're gonna actually have 5 minutes of Q&A. Ready? This is
Yeah.
the entire topic.
Okay.
In 5 minutes or less, then plus 5 minutes of Q&A. Ready?
Mhm.
Everybody is every single day my news feed of mainstream media and social media is a Twitter. I don't listen to Twitter much, but a Twitter with this or that or other thing of Gabbard and RFK Jr. and Hegsteth or whatever his name is. All these people and how horrible they are, and this crime and that crime and this thing and that. And it's just this constant 24 hours news cycle that we've talked a lot about. And I have some tendency to listen to it and agree and go, oh, that's not a great pick. And I wonder what the Senate will do about that. But just so you, our readers, our listeners can know, historically, President Trump elect can appoint whoever the hell he wants, can he? What are the qualifications to be a cabinet member?
Well, I mean, yeah, he can try to.
Right. But what are the qualifications? Is it in the Constitution or is there a federal law? You have to have an IQ or a
No, 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 no. I mean, essentially, when Washington did it, it was informal, and there were no laws about it one way or the
well, but
other.
then you I bet he appointed his friends then.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, Alexander Hamilton was basically operating like a prime minister. So
Mhm.
essentially, Thomas Jefferson was handling, foreign policy. You had a Secretary of War who was handling defense policy, and an Attorney General. But essentially, everything else was under the Treasury Secretary initially. So um, it was it was more like we had a almost a parliamentary system with Hamilton acting as the prime minister, actually running the much of the executive branch. So
But
all of
they
these
didn't
things
appoint
have
their enemies.
grew.
I know there was the famous team of rivals in Lincoln and all that, but generally you appoint your friends, don't you?
Yeah, but if you're appointing somebody who is strong-willed and smart and of high character, there are always going to be disagreements.
Sure.
And so, um, generally speaking, I mean, think over cabinets of the past, like we've had some pretty amazing qualified cabinet members over the years, uh, but no, it's there's no requirement that they be anything.
Right.
Um,
And Karen asked a brilliant political lawyer type of question. But Karen, and you get to answer it, Professor. But Karen, no, the Senate it can appoint them because they like their hair color or the height of their of their stature or their bicep. The Senate can approve or disapprove based off no criteria at all. The president can appoint them, and the Senate can go yay or nay. They can just say, "I don't like the person. I don't like the president. I don't like the person, or I love the person." And it doesn't matter. There are no criteria for the to
Oh.
being elected as an elected official in the United States or to be appointed from an elected official. There's zero criteria from city council to mayor to county commissioner to state legislator to governor to congressman, senator, president. No criteria,
Yeah,
right,
and
Professor?
in a way that yeah, and in a way, the Democratic Party was founded on the idea that literally rejected the idea of expertise. I
Ah,
mean,
but people
that
need to
was
know this. So go ahead and take 1 or 2 minutes, and then we're going to open up to Q&A. People need to know this. Go
so
ahead.
one of the big, just fights of the early republic was should we, what kind of people should serve in government? And Andrew Jackson's opinion was that the duties of government of a true republic of a true democracy the duties should be so plain and so simple that any person should be able to do that job, and therefore the president should have their supporters doing that job, and you should take no account of any field of expertise.
Oh,
And it's
great. You
called
just
this.
gave the Republican senators carte blanche to approve all these wacky people that President
No, no.
Trump
And this was,
Trump
I want to say
appoint.
this was undone later after the Civil War,
Okay, thank
in
you.
part because then they wanted to take jobs away from black people.
Oh, great. Now you've just single-handedly gone back to allowing the Senate to
Because
approve
all of
whatever.
the Republican appointments, not all, but most of the Republican appointments in the South were black people. And so they began what was called civil service reform, which was motivated in some parts by people who wanted, no, we need experts to be in these jobs. But that would have never been enough to get it through. It was some people who wanted experts in jobs and some people who wanted to fire all of the black people in the federal government.
Yikes. Okay, we're going to do a whole new show on some of these topics. We
Okay.
only have 4 minutes left.
Sorry.
Karen, uh,
Sorry.
thank you. Karen, you are a very thoughtful, smart, public policy lawyer type of person. Ask the professor whatever you want, but realize we're closing the show down in 3 minutes because he's got an important meeting. Go ahead,
You
Karen.
you got my question, but I'm curious
Yeah.
why we have a confirmation committee at all.
Because the founders placed great faith in politics, not necessarily democracy. So they were not where Andrew Jackson was. That was the innovation. You think about the people who ended up creating the sort of Democratic Party were the ones who disagreed in matters of emphasis with the founders. They were trying to fix a problem that they saw with the founding, because what the founders saw was they wanted a procedure that would enable us to hire people of high character, and that democratic processes would work out any of these problems. And so one of those, remember, most senators at the time were appointed. So they were not subjected to any democratic pressure at all. Well, I mean, they were subjected to it through the state legislatures, but giving the Senate the confirmation process meant that you had people who were very far removed from
The House of Lords.
democratic impulses, and they were the ones who would have the advice and consent. So, and almost everybody was always approved because no president would have dared to appoint people who were of low character.
Oh, now you're hinting twice now, Professor, of your disdain for some of President-elect Trump's appointments. These are definite hints.
Well, I don't pretend to know how his mind works.
Well, I don't care about that. The
So
actual person who's appointed, Senator Tootle. Do you have concerns about a couple of their appointments?
Oh, yes,
Okay,
absolutely. Right.
right.
But
Fair
I
enough.
would also
Karen,
be one of
follow-up
those
question.
senators, very much like what we've heard some senators say, which is we're going to have a process. Like
Yeah.
they're going to put these people up. We're going to listen to them. And then, by the way, I don't have to, and there's no process for me voting yes or no either.
Right.
I don't need to even give you a reason.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Karen,
So, and
follow-up question, or are you good? All right, we have 1 minute left. Jake or Bart, do you have anything to ask the professor? Last call. Jake, you took yourself off quickly.
I don't have anything to ask. I just kind of agree with Tootle because I've been listening to Jonah Goldberg and reading him, and Nick Catoggio because I am subscribed to the Dispatch, unlike
By the
you.
way, I am now subscribed to the Dispatch.
Hey, how about that?
$100.
Good job. No,
$100.
And it's like Trump has not been hiding anything about his character. People have known about him very well for the last 9 years. Let's approve every single person he wants to the cabinet. If he's going to hire terrible people, we deserve to deal with the consequences.
None of this is new. I disagree with them a little bit, but the bottom line is it's a really interesting thought, which is the opposite of what most Americans are thinking. So bravo, Jake. Good ad. Tootle, sorry, that's what Jake calls you. Professor, a
Yeah.
reaction to Jake's
Well, I just say I don't know what I actually advocate. I just feel like some of these issues are just so new, and I've never thought about any of them, that I need to hear more good commentary and conversation on a lot of, especially when it comes down to like, because there are legal issues, there are moral issues, there are historical issues that all just need to be fleshed out. And I think,
Speaking of that, and we're leaving in 12 seconds. Crypto. Oh my God, a national crypto defense. What, really? Talk about new. I know. Okay. Professor, thanks for your time today. We've never done a show in 25 minutes. Today we did so. We'll repeat a lot of this. Karen, sorry, he just has a really important meeting. Everyone, thank you. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
see you guys.
That was fun, Professor. Thanks.
Yeah, speed round.